Good morning. Thank you so much for welcoming me back here this weekend. For some of you, you remember who I am. My name is Heather Vickery. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am actually a member of this congregation, even though I live in Washington State now. I will always be a member of this congregation, by the way. Yeah, and I am just so grateful to be here with you all. I hope to talk with you more in coffee hour as well, especially those I haven't met. On a different note, though, these are some tough times we're living in right now. It's hard not to be overwhelmed by the loss of Nicole Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis, Keith Porter in Los Angeles, the less known but still beloved and important unknown migrants and other people of color killed by ICE and other systems of oppression, as well as the pervading fear that more lives will be stolen by fascism. The constant attacks on trans folks' right to live a full and flourishing life, and the constant threat and reality of war coming from our blatantly authoritarian administration make it really difficult to sleep at night sometimes. It feels like every day there's a new horror and nothing can ever change. If you're willing and able, please raise your hand if you felt despair or anguish at the state of the world in, say, the last week. Yeah. Now raise your hand if you're struggling to know what to do or how to resist this increase in fascism. And just keep it up for a second and look around. You're not alone, and that's important to remember. When I still lived in Massachusetts, I organized for migrant justice through the Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network, and am still in deep relationship with those folks and that work. And now I focus on trans liberation organizing through the Pink Haven Coalition, as well as more general organizing through my full-time paid work at the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. All that to say that I am right there with you in terms of feeling overwhelmed and struggling with fatalism, especially as a gender-expansive queer woman. Alice Walker says that resistance is the secret to joy. And I think we can all understand that. As people of faith and conscience, not resisting is hard to imagine right now. But it can be just as hard to figure out how to resist. But the good news is that the opposite of Alice Walker's quote is also true. Joy is the secret to resistance. Fascism and authoritarianism want us to be afraid and disconnected. They fear our joy because it's infinitely bigger than the boxes they want to put us in. So practicing joy in moments like these is resistance, and it's essential. We can look to past struggles to see how true this is. Dan Savage, who writes for The Stranger out in Seattle, where I live, says, "During the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced all night. The dance kept us in the fight because it was the dance we were fighting for. It didn't look like we were going to win then, and we did. It doesn't feel like we're going to win now, but we could. Keep fighting, keep dancing." And please know that when I say practicing joy is resistance, I don't mean ignoring the reality that we're in. Joy is not the same as happiness or comfort. Joy has room for grief and fear. Joy just knows that that's not ever the only thing. Joy recognizes that there can still be beauty, community, solidarity, silliness, and more, even during the toughest times. They're just a little harder to find, and because of that, even more precious and rewarding when we do find them. One of my favorite examples of folks already practicing and creating joy together while holding grief and fear is the work of UUSC partner Tetoa Matoa. Tetoa Matoa, based in Kiribati, is dedicated to preserving traditional cultural practices through an inclusive approach highlighting the importance of safeguarding culture in the face of climate change. You see, the islands of Kiribati are projected to be fully underwater in the next 20 to 30 years due to coastal erosion and water level rise. And our partners, like Te Toa Matoa, allow for the grief of losing the land they have been on for millennia through no fault of their own. And they make time for the joy of music and cultural connection, and have been working with UUSC to provide instruments to community members so that that joy can be brought into the future wherever they are. Te Toa Matoa knows that supporting the community as they face the devastating impacts of climate change, while also championing the rights of Indigenous Kiribati people living with physical and mental disabilities, is a way to practice joy. Through storytelling and music, they demand recognition, dignity, and inclusion, not just in policy, but in the fabric of their everyday lives and society. Dr. Tanmeet Sethi, who wrote the book Joy is My Justice, says, "I do not mean that you should accept inequity or injustice as unchangeable truths. Just the opposite. When you find your own joy and create a personal path to justice, which only you can forge, you're better able to fight unfairness in the world because you have risen into your own power first." And that's the key. We must find both large and small ways to rise into our power and to keep our focus on what we're struggling for, so we don't get overwhelmed by what we're struggling against. Another UUSC partner that you all know well, the Pink Haven Coalition, is also practicing joy as a way to create justice. As we all know, so much of the trans experience in this country right now is scary. People are receiving death threats and are experiencing violent attacks while also being dehumanized and criminalized by our government. Yet the Pink Haven Coalition, which many UUs across the country are a part of, and that this congregation itself fiscally sponsors and enables to do the amazing work that it's doing, is connecting trans folks who are fleeing unsafe states to communities of welcome and love in safer places. Thank you for saying yes to supporting that work. I hope it brings you as much joy as it has brought me that this is going on in this space. A particular example of practicing joy in the toughest times through Pink Haven was way back when we started, which was actually before Trump 2.0. There was a family that let us know that they had been doxxed and were receiving death threats. So their public information, their address was out, and they were scared. With very short notice, we were able to connect them with people in the place that the city they were relocating to. And those folks decided to welcome them to their new home, literally as they drove into their new home, with balloons, signs of love, and welcome gifts, so that they knew that not only would they be safer in that place, but that they were loved. And it may seem small, balloons, signs, doesn't seem like something really big. But we heard back from that family, and that they said they never felt so welcomed and so loved in any place before. Again, these acts of joy are not to be confused with toxic positivity, which would tell that family once they arrived that now everything was okay, to forget about the trauma and to move on. Those of us welcoming trans folks and their families know that it will be tough even once people arrive in those safer places, that their new homes will not be perfect, and that we can't fix the world for them even if we really want to. Instead, our practice of joy is a refusal to give up on hope. It's a refusal to make ourselves or anyone else smaller out of fear. It's a refusal to be anything other than fully human with each other, even when we're struggling. Another UUSC partner that's a perfect example of this is Asylum Pride House in Philadelphia. Asylum Pride House is at the intersection of migration LGBTQIA issues, and housing insecurity. So they are really in it right now. They have a 5-bedroom home where they house and support with case management queer asylum seekers from around the world. The founder and executive director of Asylum Pride House has said that after working in immigration for over 10 years, this is the worst and hardest it has been for the staff, herself, and the residents to maintain hope and motivation. And that's one of the reasons they chose community-style housing, so that queer asylum seekers can escape the isolation that is so common for that group. Previous residents often come back to Asylum Pride House to help with tasks or just to visit with current residents and give them a sense of what could be. It isn't uncommon for the house to host community dinners with current and previous residents and staff, including queer asylum seekers from South and Central America, Asia, and Africa all together. If that isn't a joyful vision of the beloved community, I don't know what is. So what can we all do to practice joy and to resist dehumanization and the rise of fascism in our country? We must practice imagining the world we want. And as Ruha Benjamin says in Imagination, a Manifesto, don't just shine a light on the deadly imaginations and social orders that are killing us, but experiment and play with new prescriptions, visions, and forms of social organization. We need to stay aware of what's going on and harming the most vulnerable in our communities, but we also need to share the joyful ways that people are already resisting and have always resisted oppression, like the stories I've shared with you today. When we're together, like we are today, we need to keep the vision of the world we want close. Hold it together and imagine ways we can start living into it in the here and now. After the service at coffee hour, for example, look for a way you can make someone smile. Compliment them. I have glittery sparkle shoes on today. That's a good one to go with. Tell a dad joke. Ask someone if they need a hug. Anything. Spark gender joy in our trans and gender expansive beloveds by working hard to get their pronouns right. And know that every time you use someone's correct pronouns, you make a fascist sad. True story. They feel it. Be the person who says their own pronouns without being asked, so that that others can feel comfortable sharing their own, and so that they know you're an accomplice and ally. Explore your own gender expression and wear it boldly. Again, sparkle shoes, rainbow feather earrings, just an example. Find ways to bring more joy into your life so you can stay in the struggle and be the best version of yourself while you resist. As I said, as a gender-expansive queer woman who organizes for trans and migrant liberation, I am often so tired. And one of the things that I have started to do lately that's really been helping is I create little pine cone creatures and critters that I randomly leave around my neighborhood for other people to find. And yes, they do have googly eyes. I feel joy in making them. I feel joy thinking about others stumbling upon this random googly-eyed pine cone. And I can keep coming back to them either physically or in my mind when things get hard. Feel free to ask to see pictures after the service if you'd like. But now it's your turn. I want you to take a moment right now, close your eyes or soften your gaze, and think about one thing, very specific thing that has brought you joy this year. Try to bring yourself back to that moment, or imagine you're with that person or doing that thing right now. Take a couple deep breaths and let that joy spread through your body. I see people smiling, which is great to see, so yes, you're doing it. Now take a moment to think about what the root of that joy was. Was it community? Creativity? Amazing children in the front of our service? I love it. Please, that's joyful. Is it family? What is the essence of that joy for you? Your homework, because I like to give homework, will be to use that essence as a jumping off point to create your own joyful practice that you can use to keep yourself balanced, no matter how small or silly. In fact, the sillier the better. Ask for help in thinking of something if you need to. Some people find joy in helping, so, two birds, one stone kind of thing there. When we find our own joy in the toughest times, we rise into our own power, and that is resistance in and of itself. Be weird. Be queer. Be beautiful and fully human. Do art. Take naps. Play. Keep dancing. Because that's what we're struggling for, the dance. And I think we can all admit that a dance battle is a lot more fun than any other kind. Amen. Ashe, and may we keep dancing.